This is GFree Radio. Here's your host, Peter Stewart.
They, whoever they are, keep saying a pill to treat celiac disease is almost here. Well, like waiting for the holidays, that day will surely come. How many, years do you think it'll be before a pill to combat the effects of eating gluten can be prescribed? We have one insider's view, and that length of time that we may have to wait may surprise you. Also in this week's episode, why avoiding gluten can be good for your skin. We have a doctor's analysis of why what happens in your gut can manifest itself on your face. And we take a look at the GFree market in, we've done the UK, and also we've talked about the United Arab Emirates and the Netherlands and the US of A, and also Canada. Coming up, we've got France and Costa Rica. This week we're going to be taking a look at the GFree market in Russia. Yeah, it's an emerging country for dietary food, and we've got the stats on the long-term opportunities out there. And guess which big firm already has got a toehold in the market? This week we've got another call for people to take part in a celiac study and help in a clinical trial. And we tell you about the huge, and when I say huge, I mean ginormous, absolutely gigantic donation for the group that researches and helps those with celiac disease. I mean, seriously, you won't believe the size of the sum that's been donated to help us. Boy, oh boy. Our interview is with Rachel Begun, who works out of Colorado, where she counsels newly diagnosed celiac patients. Rachel was, in her own words, always the girl with a bad stomach. She took that as normal. Now she's a celiac and registered dietitian nutritionist. Rachel tells us there's still a serious void of help and information out there, a void that she's helping to fill. Hear about her diagnosis, how she helps people, about eating GFree in Colorado and New York, and from IronyCorner, Rachel tells us about the odd situation of how you can go to a restaurant with a big GF menu and still get glutened, and go to the one with no GF menu where they make a perfect GF meal from scratch. Plus, we've got details of a GFree meetup event in London that's the first of its kind, and let you know how you could get involved, and of course our tweets of the week. All that and more, episode 59 of the GFree Radio Show.
Feel free for gluten-free, say feel free to polish off their pasta, devour their desserts, relish their ready meals, savour their savoury bakes, munch on their muffins, grab their granolas. Whew, there's certainly lots of choice in the Feel Free for gluten-free range. Visit feelfreefoods.co.uk.
How you doing? Yeah, this is the world's only weekly podcast for people who are diagnosed as having celiac disease or suffer in some other way from the effects of eating gluten. Or maybe you've decided to go on a gluten-free diet out of choice or perceived health benefits. Whatever the reason you're tuning in, we really are pleased that you have done so. Thank you so much indeed for joining us. Thank you for following us on Twitter as well. We're at GFree Radio. And you know what? If you see a tweet of ours promoting the show that you favourite, often we think to ourselves, you know what, if it's worth favouriting, it's probably worth retweeting as well. It's only a couple of extra pushes with your thumb or your finger, isn't it? So we'd really appreciate if you retweet that information to all of your followers as well. So we'll start off with our health news before we meet up with Rachel Begun and a fantastic interview that we had with her a few days ago. And we'll start off with the news that a pill for celiac disease is, quote, almost here, according to the Huffington Post and indeed several other articles over the past week or so. A new pill may work to reduce incidental damage, the ALV-003. We've spoken about it before, but it's always worth keeping this particular pot boiling, isn't it, and bubbling on the back part of the stove and bringing it forward occasionally just to remind us all about the different research which is going on. It's called ALV-003. It's made up of two gluten-specific enzymes enzymes that break down gluten into safe-to-digest fragments that don't trigger an immune response in celiacs. It's not on the market yet. Boy, oh boy, if it were, I'm sure we would have all heard about it. But the results of a proof of concept study are promising. The pill successfully protected the small intestine better than a placebo in research published in Gastroenterology. That's the official journal of the American Gastroenterological Society. Now, should say full disclosure that study was actually funded by the company that makes ALV-003, Alvine Pharmaceuticals. But as part of the study, researchers randomised 41 people in Finland. It's only 41. It's not a huge study, but they're starting small, as indeed you always would, because just in case something went a little bit wrong, you don't want to be influencing or affecting too many people. But the researchers randomised those 41 people with medically diagnosed celiac disease to take either ALV-003 or a placebo pill every day. And they also asked all the participants to eat a daily gluten challenge. It's like something out of some game show on the TV, isn't it? The gluten challenge. Would you take part in the gluten challenge? Would you do this? Eating 2 grams of gluten for 6 weeks in the form of breadcrumbs. It's actually the equivalent amount of gluten in half a slice of bread. Then the researchers took the samples of the small intestine and analysed both before and after the experiment. And the researchers found that the participants who took the placebo pill had significantly more intestinal injury and inflammation than those who took ALV-003. For those who did take ALV-003 daily, their post-experiment small intestine biopsies were virtually indistinguishable from the baseline biopsies researchers had taken before the trial. Interesting stuff. So they certainly hadn't got worse. So they're currently in the, this is the situation so far then, just to kind of bring it up to speed. They're currently in the middle of an international randomised and controlled trial of 500 participants to see if the pill can actually help heal small intestine damage caused by celiac disease. The drug is still years away from the marketplace. However, if all goes well with all the studies and the approval, it's based out of the US, so it's going to be the US Food and Drug Administration getting involved there. The HuffPost says that you could expect to see the pill in stores around, what do you reckon? What do you reckon? Well, you mentioned this at the start of the show. 20 years? 10 years? Okay, I would think, 10 years is often what we've heard in the past, but we've heard it in the past, so we can knock off 3 or 4 years, bring it down to something like 8 years, something like that. 6 years, you're saying. Okay. The clever money seems to be on the pill in stores around 2018. Well, heck, we're halfway through 2014. That's not too far around the corner, is it? The question we often set when we're talking about this kind of treatment is, but would you take it? Interesting. Let's see what they come up with in, around, or possibly after 2018. And of course, other companies are racing towards the same finish line as well. Alba Therapeutics are in the midst of a trial for a drug to reduce the symptoms of celiac disease. We've spoken about this one before. Larazotide acetate, that's the one that they're doing. That prevents gluten uptake by closing the spaces between cells, making the intestines less permeable and less susceptible to gluten-triggered inflammation. And also we've spoken about another one. The name escapes me at the moment, which is done by GlaxoSmithKline. So GlaxoSmithKline, by far and away the most the company most people have heard of. But these companies aren't messing around. They are seeing a huge promise here that they can make some money out of it. Let's be honest, that's what they're in it for their shareholders and so on. And you may be thinking to yourself, boy, oh boy, I've got shares in Glaxo, or I've got shares in some of these other companies. Well, that's perhaps where your clever money might be at this stage. So interesting stuff. And, a bit later on in the show, we're going to be talking about the emerging market of Russia and how gluten-free food is selling over there. So you can see that it is a trend, and I mean that in the most positive sense, because I appreciate that I'm someone with celiac disease, and you probably are as well. So I'm not saying it's a trendy diet. What I'm saying is that the trend of diagnosis and the trend of different companies getting into the market and providing gluten-free food is growing and growing all of the time. GFree Radio, I'm Peter Stewart. Hope you're well. Hope you've had a good day. Moving into summer in the Northern Hemisphere. Moving into colder climes in the Southern Hemisphere. And we got that interview with Rachel Begun a little bit later on. And also that huge, I'll tell you, it is a huge, mind-boggling donation which has been given to help care for people with celiac disease. Let's do a little quiz for you again. When I say huge, what do I mean? What do you reckon I mean by huge? $2 million? Do you reckon? Okay. It could be $2 million. It could be $2 million. I may be a little, I'll tell you a little bit about what's going on behind the scenes here. I may be a little distracted this week while I'm presenting. I may be a little bit thrown. You may hear a few little hesitations. And I'll tell you why. I'm wearing glasses for the first time. At the moment, they're on the top of my head. As I look across the studio and out through the glass, they're on the top. But when I'm reading some of these articles and my notes, they come down onto my nose. That is me twiddling the glasses. I'm trying to get used to them, so bear with me. Sometimes I may go to read something and think, oh, I can't see. It's age creeping up on all of us, isn't it? However, my parents, my siblings have all worn glasses for years. And frankly, I think at my age, I haven't done too badly at escaping the glasses wearing up till now. That's the future that's in store for me. Looking back, it may be. I don't know whether we've met, dear listener, but, you may have met me. You may have seen my photograph in some places. But it may be hard for you to imagine when you look upon the visage, which is such a handsome, I think I can say young, man, in the prime of his life. You may think to yourself, gosh, what an Adonis. What a fine specimen of a human being. I'm being ironic. You may think he's never had a problem with his health in his life apart from the old tum issues, which he talks about every week. Dear listener, that wasn't always the case. No. As a youngster, I suffered very terribly from acne, and it really was serious. It really was hugely serious. I had pills. I had acupuncture. I had herbalist treatment. I had creams. I had washes. I had laser treatment. It was serious. It was so serious. It was so bloody serious that actually at one stage I was admitted to hospital. Boy, oh boy. It went on for about 15 years. It was heartbreaking for people around me, for my parents. It wasn't very nice for my friends. It wasn't a bowl of cherries for me. And I got to my, late 20s, early 30s, and I suddenly realised that I was only just entering the cusp of a time where I'd been spot-free for more than I'd had acne. Yeah, that cusp. As I say, I'd had it for 15 years. Obviously, I hadn't had it for the first 10 or 12. I'm fine now. But you know what? When this next article was brought to my attention a few days ago, a little bit inside of me went, if only we had known, if only a doctor had realised or put two and two together. Believe me, I'm not blaming the doctors. Celiac disease was not very well known when I was growing up. I was born in 1967. I'm not blaming the doctor. As you can tell from my potted medical history that I've just divulged for one of the first times. The GP, my parents, did all they could. As well as those various treatments, I came off chocolate, I came off fried foods, I drank loads of water, I reduced the amount of starchy foods, I got more fresh air, I cut back on milk, all sorts of things. We did everything we possibly could. The article to which I refer is this one here. Nearly 85% of people have acne at some point in their lives, says Mercola.com, making acne the most common skin disorder in the US. Of course, there's acne and acne, isn't there? There are pimples to full-blown chemical eruptions on your face. While acne typically begins during puberty, it's not restricted to adolescence and may impact any age group, even into your 50s and beyond. While not physically dangerous, acne can take a considerable psychological toll. Some sufferers become so self-conscious and embarrassed that their professional and personal lives suffer, leading to increasing feelings of alienation, depression, and social withdrawal. Many mistaken believe acne is mostly an aesthetic problem, but it's actually a sign of deeper imbalance in your system, often in your gut. Most physicians miss this connection entirely, instead prescribing acne drugs and other topical treatments. Americans spend more than $2.2 billion every year on acne treatments, including prescription and over-the-counter products, but many will turn out to be useless if you ignore the foundational cause of most acne, improper diet. Full-blown celiac disease, which is an extreme form of gluten sensitivity causing both the adaptive and innate immune system to attack your small intestine, affects an estimated 1.8% of people in Western cultures, but non-celiac gluten sensitivity may actually affect as many as 30 to 40% of the population, according to Dr. Alessio Fasana of Massachusetts General Hospital. This is because we all create a substance called zonulin in the intestine in response to gluten. Glutinous proteins, found in wheat, barley and rye, known as prolamines, can make your gut more permeable, which allows partially digested proteins to get into your bloodstream that would otherwise have been excluded, any of which can sensitize your immune system and promote inflammation, which can contribute to worsening acne. Once gluten sensitizes your gut, it then becomes more permeable, and all manner of gut bacterial components and previously excluded dietary proteins, including casein and other dairy proteins, have direct access to your bloodstream, thereby further challenging your immune system. In 2007, a study published in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition found that young men 15 to 25 with acne problems were placed on low glycemic diets for 12 weeks, showed significant improvements in acne and insulin sensitivity. Research published last year also found that a high glycemic diet and frequent dairy consumption are linked to acne. Well, that article goes on for 4 pages. I've read half a dozen paragraphs from the first page. That brought me up sharp, as you can imagine. The direct response, I knew that there was a link between the two, but that and other pieces of that article on Macola.com, which I haven't read to you, does say that there's a stronger link between celiac disease, with which I was diagnosed at the age of 38, and acne, which I suffered with severely between the ages of about 12 and 25. If only. We'll file that under what could have been. What could have been. Okay. It's Peter Stewart. It is the GFree Radio Show, episode 59. Still to come, we'll talk about long-term gluten-free opportunities in Russia. We've got another call for action and a call for participants to get involved with some more gluten-free research. We'll also talk about that article from the Wall Street Journal about that huge donation to the New York Presbyterian Morgan Stanley Children's Hospital for a program focused on pediatric gastrointestinal disorders, and about what's going on in London, that first gluten-free gathering. All that and more after we hear from Rachel Begun, one of my new best friends. And here is the chat that we did with her a few days ago, and she talks everything about how she was diagnosed as having celiac disease, also how she turned her expertise as living as a celiac into her business. She also says, well, I'm telling you what you're going to hear anyway. Here, ladies and gentlemen, on the GFree Radio Show, Rachel Begun.
I am a registered dietitian nutritionist, and I was actually a registered dietitian nutritionist before being diagnosed with celiac disease. So I would say there are 3 major things that are a part of my business. The first thing that I do is I provide counseling to people on special diets, or what I like to call dietary lifestyles, obviously with a big focus on the gluten-free population. I also consult for the food industry, working with manufacturers, food service providers, hospitality providers, to help them be a part of the solution. So I really help them understand the nutrition landscape that they're working in and how it relates to their products and services. And so I help them, first of all, provide solutions so that they can provide healthy and safe food to the public, but I also help them to understand who their audience is, how they should be messaging their products, how they should be communicating to the consumers about what they're doing with regard to their products and their services. Oftentimes I'll often act as their spokesperson as well. And then the third piece of my business is communications and media spokesperson work. So what I do is provide sound, evidence-based nutrition information to the public, obviously, again, with a heavy focus on educating about special diets, again, what I call dietary lifestyles. But I write articles for publications. I do interviews for television, radio, and print. I have a pretty large presence on social media, so I use all of those forms of media to educate the public.
Good heavens, you got an overarching view of the whole food business, haven't you? Your feet don't touch the ground.
I try.
Now, Rachel, give us a bit of insight, if you would, because over here in the UK, over the last few months, we've heard more and more about the dangers of sugar and salt, more recently as well, in diets. You know, for the past 10, 20, 30 years, it's been fat, don't eat too much fat, eat reduced fat items. And now suddenly the tide is turning and they're saying, we may have got all this wrong. It's not fat that's the big bogeyman. It's sugar all along, and also salt too. What's your take on that?
we are eating too much salt and too much sugar, and those two things come into our diet in many, many different ways. There are many different sources of sugar. There are different ways we get salt in the diet. So, learning how to minimize both and to flavor our foods with other things that don't provide unnecessary calories, such as herbs and spices and low-calorie broths, those kinds of things. Those are great ways to flavor foods without necessarily all the added sugar and salt.
But you're in a catch-22, aren't you? I started a brand new muesli this morning, and I thought that's really, really tasty. And then I looked at the packet, and I realised it's got a huge amount of sugar in. And I guess that's because of the dried fruit in the muesli.
Natural sugars come in the form of naturally occurring foods like milk and fruit, and getting sugar from those sources is good because that comes with all these other nutrition benefits like fiber and phytonutrients. It's the added sugars. That's what we really need to be watching in our diet and to be consuming less of. And that's a matter of, you can't just pick up the food label, and I know food labels are different over in England and Great Britain than they are here, and I'm not even really sure about what the food labels look like over there, but I know here in the United States, it's not just enough to look at the nutrition facts panel, which lists how many sugars there are. You really need to learn to look at the ingredient statement to be able to identify what those added sugars are. And the good thing is the FDA, which oversees food packaging labeling here in the United States, they are actually proposing changes to the food package label that will require an extra line so that people can see the difference between total sugars and added sugars.
Okay, now we're going to be coming to talk to you about your celiac diagnosis in a few moments' time. Just one more question. On your website, you say food choices are good for your mind, body and soul. Now, I get the body bit and I kind of get the mind bit as well. Why is your food choice, do you reckon, makes a difference to your soul?
Eating is such a personal and individual thing. We are raised in different cultures, and different cultures have different focuses on different types of foods and how we cook. And eating healthfully goes beyond just choosing certain foods and nutrients. It has to be done in conjunction with how we're raised and the food preferences that we have and the values that we associate with food. So, what may feed somebody else's soul may not necessarily feed a different person's soul. So what I mean by that is eating is very much mindful, and that what is healthy there are generally healthy foods that we encourage everybody to eat, but what is one healthy solution for one person doesn't necessarily mean that it's the healthiest solution for another person. And gluten is a perfect example. So, somebody with celiac disease, obviously you can't eat gluten, but, for the person who doesn't have celiac disease or doesn't have a gluten sensitivity, choosing a whole grain barley as part of a whole grain dish may be an excellent option. So that's what I really mean by that. It's a very individual endeavor when it comes to eating healthfully and eating food that you love and enjoy.
And you know what? Part of that enjoyment is actually creating something from all those different parts on your kitchen surface and putting it all together and creating something which looks good, which tastes good, and when you have a couple of mouthfuls of it, you think to yourself, I created that. That does something for the soul as well, doesn't it? Don't you think?
Oh, yeah. Many people find cooking to be extremely rewarding, to be extremely relaxing, to be comforting. Then there's the love aspect of it. People use cooking and creating food for others as a way of showing their love and a way of showing their nurturing. It's one of the most basic human interactions. So absolutely.
Okay, so let's hear a little bit about your celiac story. So it's really interesting that you're involved in the food business and you've got this insight into nutrition and dietetics and so on, and you are a celiac yourself. Tell me how you were diagnosed. What's your celiac story, Rachel?
Yeah, I was pretty much that very typical case of somebody who was diagnosed with IBS and lactose intolerance, and that was it, and I had to manage it and I had to deal with it. And, very common to other people, they get this misdiagnosis of IBS and lactose intolerance. And, when celiac disease actually was triggered, nobody ever really knows what that happens. But, I was always kind of the girl with the bad stomach. I was always the one who needed to know where the bathroom was. That was just, very much I started to take it for granted as that was just my normal. And then, closer to being, to when I was diagnosed, like within the couple of years of being diagnosed, I was definitely experiencing really low energy, and I was very lethargic, and I was sleeping constantly. I was sleeping in amounts that just didn't make sense. I mean, for somebody who took as good a care of themselves as I did, I was eating, I exercised regularly, I got enough sleep. It just didn't make sense that I had such a low energy, and I didn't even connect the low energy with the bad stomach and the GI issues. I hadn't even made that connection. To me, that low energy just, it was my normal. I just took it as something that, that was just me and it was normal for me. But then, my GI symptoms got to a point where they were getting particularly bad, and that's what prompted me to, go back to the GI doctor after many, many years of just kind of, as I put it, like putting up with my IBS. And that's when the testing process started, and that's when I was diagnosed. And, when I was diagnosed, it was kind of like this rude awakening in the sense that I was diagnosed, and I got this diagnosis, and the GI doctor walked out of the room, and that was it. And you're kind of left to figure it out on your own. And I thought, wow, I'm a registered dietitian, and I have a much better understanding of what goes into my food, and I have a good handle on what gluten was and what foods contained it. And it was still extremely difficult for me, the emotional aspect of having to change my diet, and the underestimation of how difficult it is to eat outside the home. Just because you have a knowledge of something doesn't mean that the restaurants and the chefs that you go to will. So that's when I really kind of had the aha moment of there is a serious void of information out there, and that's when I really knew that I had to focus my business on helping others. It was an interesting time because it was right at the point where I was starting up my own business, and I was going to solely focus in this one area, and this diagnosis of celiac disease really kind of the light bulb went on, and I was like, wow, I can really help others and make it easier for them to eat healthfully and navigate a gluten-free diet.
So how long have you been diagnosed? How long have you been a celiac?
I started the testing process in 2008, and I was confirmed with diagnosis in January of 2009.
How have things changed over that period then, Rachel?
Well, that's an interesting question. I actually just moved to Boulder. When I was diagnosed, I lived in New York. I was born, raised, and lived in New York my entire life up until June of 2013. That's when I moved to Boulder. But I have to say Boulder is a very high awareness for gluten-free, and I have to say I actually find it easier to eat here in Boulder than I did when I was back in New York.
And yet, you would have thought with those big restaurants and so on, with such an international clientele, that they would be really up to speed in the Big Apple. But you're saying that's not the case?
No, I'm not saying that they're not up to speed. I'm just saying percentage-wise, or just when there's generally over the course of all restaurants, I find that there's just a very high level of awareness about gluten-free in the Boulder area, and I think more so than in New York. You can't really compare the two. New York literally has like thousands and thousands of restaurants, so clearly they're going to have many restaurants that do know how to handle gluten-free. But I find that just the awareness level is higher here. I see many more restaurants that actively and proactively address the issue.
So give me an example then. So you're off on a Saturday night, you've got a date, maybe a midweek date night with your husband and so on, and you decide to go to a brand new restaurant. talk me through then the kind of conversation that you might have, perhaps A, with your husband, but also B, with the restaurant, either before you arrive or once you have walked through the front door.
Yeah, I think, spontaneous eating is a lot of fun, but when you have celiac disease or even a food allergy, spontaneous eating is really not that much fun, because spontaneous eating is where problems can occur. So being prepared is really what it's all about when you have celiac disease, and this is the piece of celiac disease and food allergies, and anybody who lives following a special diet. This is really where I would say where my wheelhouse is and what I deal with when it comes to working with individuals and working with industry. But it's all about having a plan. So what I always recommend is, first of all, you want to be eating at a restaurant that understands what your needs are. And that's not to say that a gluten-free menu necessarily means that you're going to get a safe meal, because that's not always the case. What it comes down to is going to restaurants that understand good service and understand, how to prevent cross-contact. I've eaten at restaurants that have very large gluten-free menus, and I've gotten gluten and I've gotten sick. And then I've also eaten at restaurants that don't have a gluten-free menu, but their kitchen staff has a very good understanding of how to prevent cross-contact, and they're just really good about customer service, and I've had an excellent meal there. So you can't really predetermine without having an understanding and of what the restaurant is about and what their level of training is. So what I always recommend is that people do research on the restaurant, always reaching out to your gluten-free community and getting recommendations from them about where they've eaten and had a good experience. That's always a good place to start. But if you don't have that recommendation, the best thing to do and the best place to start is go to the restaurant's website. Oftentimes that will be an indicator of, first of all, is the menu just so filled with gluten that finding something or having something specially prepared is not easy. If that's the case, then you might want to choose a different restaurant. But so what I always do is tell people to look at the menu and identify at least one or two or three items that they think that they might want, so that when you do go to the restaurant, you have a more narrow conversation, and it actually makes it easier to communicate with the staff, and then you're more likely to get a gluten-free meal. But I always recommend calling the restaurant ahead of time and letting them know about your gluten-free needs, and doing so at a time where they're actually paying attention and listening to what you're saying, because that certainly helps. And then you need to be prepared to have a conversation with the wait staff or the manager about the specific items that you're interested in, and being able to talk to them specifically about how the product's made. It's not just a matter of knowing what ingredients are in the meal, because oftentimes you can get something that doesn't have gluten in it, but the real issue comes down to, is it coming into contact with gluten that it shouldn't be? So having a true understanding of how that dish is being made in the kitchen really helps to understand where the potential risks may be and how they should be avoided.
And all of that conversation, you've got to be polite, haven't you? You've got to be able to explain what it is, the kind of information that you're after. You've got to give the impression that you know what it is you're talking about without being rude, without being too demanding.
Yeah, that's definitely true. I always say you have to be gracious in the way you handle your conversation, but at the same time, you also have to be very assertive, and you have to be, there's that fine balance between being friendly and polite and gracious and thankful, and also being matter of fact about what your needs are, and the fact that, coming into contact with gluten is not acceptable because it can make you very sick. So there is that fine line between the two.
And there's another big problem, isn't there? I mean, I'm coming over to the States back end of this year in October time. Okay, so I'm going to Denver and I'm going around Yellowstone and so on, and the environs there for a couple of weeks. So how do I do that kind of research, do you reckon? I mean, it's fine for you to know which restaurant you're going to be visiting across town. Me? I haven't got a clue where I'm going to be on what day. How do I start when I'm actually travelling from abroad then, Rachel, do you reckon?
Yeah, there are some good resources that can really help you identify restaurants that serve gluten-free. And, one good example is Triumph Dining has their gluten-free restaurant guide, which you can search by the restaurant chain if it's a chain restaurant, or you can search by the area depending on where you're going to be in the United States. So that's one really good resource. Another great resource is the gluten-free travel site, which is GFtravelSite.com. People who have been to the restaurant, they provide reviews. So you're getting actual personal reviews and recommendations from people who have to eat gluten-free. So those are two really great resources to help you find gluten-free restaurants that people have had good experience with. Another good place to go, there are so many different gluten-free blogs that people follow that, you can get some recommendations there. Mine is one of them, the Gluten-Free RD, and that's glutenfreerd.net. But also, if you go to the National Foundation for Celiac Awareness, they've compiled a quick list of many, many different gluten-free blogs for which you can potentially find ideas as well. And I do have to disclose I am a scientific medical advisor for the National Foundation for Celiac Awareness. It is a volunteer position. I do not get paid for making recommendations to go to their site, but I do want to provide that disclosure.
Absolutely. Fantastic. Now, one more thing, because I'm a little bit jealous of you. About 5 years ago, I was due to go on holiday around Patagonia. And I had to cancel because I had a really bad back injury, and the idea of going around Patagonia in the back of a Land Rover for a week, 10 days was nothing that I could even contemplate. Certainly couldn't do. So I had to cancel that, unfortunately. But heck, you've not only been there, but you survived without a severe back injury, and also you survived living gluten-free as well. How difficult, then, being in the middle of nowhere and with a language that, forgive me, I don't know, you may know Spanish, I don't know. How easy was that for you to live gluten-free in Patagonia down the bottom end of Chile?
Well, I have to say, first of all, Patagonia is just unbelievable. It's a beautiful place. It's extremely remote. There in the Chilean portion of Patagonia, there really aren't that many places to stay, and there certainly are not a lot of restaurants. So it's not like being in a city where you have all these restaurant options. We were actually stayed at this one resort that was really, really, really good about serving me gluten-free. In fact, prior to going to the resort, they had a questionnaire asking us about our dietary preferences and needs, and that's when they found out about my gluten-free needs, and they accommodated them to a T. So in Patagonia, we literally stayed in one place, and we had all of our meals there. In fact, the resort even prepared our lunches for when we would go on like a full day hike. They prepared everything to be gluten-free for when we went hiking and we were away from the resort. So it was just this one resort where we ate all of our meals, and it was phenomenal. So that's why it was very easy for me.
Excellent. Okay, Rachel, I'm really relieved that you survived Patagonia, and you've given me the impetus to, next time the opportunity arises, as hopefully it will, to sign up to go there as well. Let's finish off then, Rachel, by giving you another plug. Your websites, Twitter, Facebook, books, all the rest of it. How can we find out more about you?
Great. The best place to find more about me and to be able to connect with me on all of my social media is to go to my website, rachelbegun.com. RACHELBEGUN. There you can link to all of my social media, but in particular Twitter. My Twitter handle is @RachelBegunRD.
And I'm sure you'll give Rachel Begun your support. This is Peter Stewart. You are listening to episode 59 of the GFree radio show, the only podcast of its type in the entire world. Thank you very much indeed for your support. Thank you for the loan of your ears. Let's look at, let's go around the world. Now, we've done this before, haven't we? And we've spoken to people in the past living obviously in the UK and Ireland and the Netherlands, and in a few weeks' time we're going to be going to France You're probably aware of the GFree situation in Australia and the United States and Canada. We've spoken about that before. Costa Rica is another country we're going to be visiting in a few weeks' time as well. We've even been as far as the Falkland Islands. That's probably about as far south as we've been, right down there, the bottom of Chile, down in the chilly South Atlantic. But also, what about the long-term gluten-free opportunities in Russia? The largest market for gluten-free currently is the United States. That country is expected to account for 60% of global sales by 2018. That's that year again. Other countries that have forecast strong growth in the review period up to 2018 then, the UK, Italy, Spain, Germany, Australia and Canada. Part of the trick, according to this report in Just Food Home, or justfood.com, I should say, is to work out which markets are ripe for expansion. Now, you're probably aware that all those companies are expanding with their GFree food possibilities at the moment. We hear about that every week on the programme. But according to data from Euromonitor International, the research firm that number crunches all these kinds of things, gluten-free sales in Russia totaled, now bearing in mind, it is a huge country with hundreds and hundreds of, well, millions, let's be honest, millions of people. Gluten-free sales in Russia in 2013, ladies and gentlemen, $181 million in 2013. Boy, oh boy, oh boy. It's risen by 12% over 6 years. It is going some, by far the largest gluten-free category in Russia, accounting for sales of $152 million, 84% of the total market. What do you reckon? The largest gluten-free category in Russia is baby food. And I guess the reason for that is that, I guess, as people become increasingly aware of the health and wellness issues which are kind of propelling the gluten-free sector, whether you personally believe in the ethical or moral situation where the perceived health benefits are promoted to a general public, whatever. But I suppose as Russia becomes richer and people move into more middle classes, people are prepared to pay a premium for food for their children. That's human nature, isn't it? According to projections from Nielsen, here we go, Russia's middle class is currently 104 million strong. The segment of the population is expected to expand by 16% between now and 2020. The report says stable gross domestic product growth, declining inflation, a record low unemployment rate are pointing to positive consumer purchasing power in Russia. Growing awareness and growing purchasing power certainly point to a positive future for the gluten-free sector in Russia in the coming years. Already demand for gluten-free outside of baby food is on the rise. Russian sales of gluten-free bakery products in particular have witnessed growth. Now, there are some companies that are already out there, household names that you and I know. Guess which companies are out there already making the most of all this? Okay, I'll tell you in a second. The current scope of the market remains somewhat limited by, as you might imagine, in Russia, availability issues, logistics, transport, just the sheer problem of getting food to such a diverse, widely spread population. The sector is largely the purveyor of specialist shops, and Russian supermarkets have only recently started to carry specialist foods like gluten-free lines. There is a newly established website. You may want to have a little look at this and see what it's all about. Stopgluten.info. It lists the gluten-free products that are available in the Moscow area alone. And, okay, international brands already out there, poised, ready to strike. They're already striking. They're poised, ready to take full advantage as the market explodes. We've got Jelly Belly, not familiar with their work. Also Tyrrell's, I believe that's a British brand. And also, we spoke to them a couple of weeks ago. They were on the programme. Let's give you some more clues. Big American company, not Udis. Huge American company. It's right across. You know it in the UK as well. It's right across. It's right around the world. It is huge. They've recently got into the pasta market in the UK, the GFree pasta market. They do the sauces as well. They're talking about some gluten-free pies. Yeah, it's Heinz, ladies and gentlemen. Heinz, really, really big in the GFree market in Russia. Interesting times, and also really interesting about the baby food as well, especially if you consider the baby food, in jars and packets and so on. That's kind of long life, isn't it? So we're not talking about the fresh bit, things like that. We're talking about the about stuff that can be kept for a long time, which of course will make it easier to transport. Interesting times indeed. We mentioned a call for participants to take part in research last week up in Scotland. And now Celiac study, that's a clinical research study designed to evaluate an investigational drug for celiac disease. They want some more people to get involved as well. The study will explore whether the drug is able to improve the damage in the lining of the intestine caused by ingesting even small traces of gluten. So if you've been diagnosed with celiac disease or attempting to be on a GFree diet, or if you've experienced at least one moderate or severe symptom of celiac disease in the past month, they want to hear from you, and you'll be able to participate in the research process that may lead to new treatment options. celiactionstudy.com, CELI Action Study, all one word, .com. celiactionstudy.com. More details there. Details in a few moments' time. On the way, about that huge donation to the Children's Hospital in New York, and also what's going on in London, and also our GFree tweets of the week. Of course, the tweets of the week. Of course.
Feel free for gluten-free, say feel free to polish off their pasta, devour their desserts, relish their ready meals, savour their savoury bakes, munch on their muffins, grab their granolas. Whew, there's certainly lots of choice in the Feel Free for gluten-free range. Visit feelfreefoods.co.uk.
I mentioned a bit earlier on I was wearing glasses. I also mentioned that I kept putting them on the top of my head. Is it natural that you forget to do that and you just keep them on your nose? Is it? Because that's what I've been doing. I've only had these. This is the first time that I've worn these for more than a couple of minutes at a time doing the show. Okay, let's move on. This report from the Wall Street Journal, really, this is going to blow your socks off, guys. There are hundreds of symptoms of celiac disease, from gas to insomnia to rickets, says the Wall Street Journal. Yet sometimes people, especially children, show no symptoms at all. Absolutely. The difficulty of diagnosing celiac disease is what spurred Phyllis and Ivan Seidenberg to donate to the New York Presbyterian Morgan Stanley Children's Hospital for a program focused on pediatric gastrointestinal orders. The Seidenbergs made the gift because their grandchildren were diagnosed with celiac disease a few years ago. The children now see physicians at the hospital. The gift, and yes, you're right, I haven't told you how much, is designed to help the hospital better serve the local population, fund research, sustain the hospital's affiliated Celiac Disease Centre at Columbia University Medical Center, and to help the gastrointestinal department expand basic research in understanding of intestinal issues. How much is a big donation? $1 million. Yeah, going to go with that? $1 million. Higher. It's all come from Phyllis and Ivan Seidenberg. 2 million? Higher. 4 million? Higher. Ivan Seidenberg is 67. He is the former chairman and CEO of Verizon Communications. That's the mobile phone business, isn't it? Yeah? So he's worth a bit. What are we up to? 4 million. Let's double it. 8 million. Should we say 8 million? Should we say $8 million? No. More. The money will also go towards renovating the Children's Hospital Paediatric Gastrointestinal Wing. It's not 8 million, Peter? No, it's not. 10 million? OK, you're kind of getting warm. The collateral effects of children going undiagnosed and without treatment are serious, said Mr. Seidenberg. Quote, it affects the ability to learn, your stamina and your growth. It can make life miserable. It's higher than 10 million US dollars. The gift, says Mrs. Seidenberg, Phyllis, is to help everyone who's been diagnosed and will be diagnosed with celiac disease. Should we settle about $12 million? Should we say that? Okay. You can settle at 12 million. The Seidenbergs didn't. $13 million. And a bit of loose change. It's nearer $14 million. Boy, it's such a sweet story, because even though their grandchildren were diagnosed as having celiac disease a couple of years ago, the couple have got a long history with the hospital, the New York Presbyterian Morgan Stanley Children's Hospital. Mr. Seidenberg served on the hospital board of trustees since 1996. He grew up in the Bronx. I love this. He began his career at Verizon as a cable splicer's assistant, and he became the CEO and chairman. Phyllis and Ivan met in the Bronx at junior high school. Later on, she became an elementary school teacher, and she raises funds for the Celiac Disease Centre. Boy, oh boy. What are we up to? $14 million? No, it's more than that. Phyllis and Ivan Seidenberg had donated to New York Presbyterian Morgan Stanley Children's Hospital $16 million US dollars. Boy, oh boy. It's fantastic. Isn't that fantastic? I tell you what, next time you are drinking something cold with bubbles in and may make you go a little lightheaded, raise a glass to the Seidenbergs, yeah? Because even though that money is going to them and, you know, obviously pound to a penny, you're not living in New York. You may not be directly helped by that money going to the Children's Hospital. We surely won't deny it to other people who do, but that's going to have a filter-through effect, including, as it says, to fund research and to expand basic research in understanding of intestinal issues. That's going to help us, isn't it? That is really going to help us. Okay, from New York to London, and this email that came through to GFree Radio a couple of days ago from Kim McGowan, big fan of the show. Kim, welcome along. Thanks so much for all your ongoing support. Peter, hi. I hope this finds you well. Yeah, thank you. I wanted to drop you... How about you? I wanted to drop you a line about a new event called Gluten-Free Gathering, the first of which is taking place in London at the GB Pizza Company on Thursday the 26th of June at 7 p.m. It's an opportunity to meet like-minded gluten-free people, eat amazing, safe food, and hear a couple of inspiring speakers. Plus, there is the free-from library to browse and goodie bags to take home. Boy, it aims to be a rich, gluten-free experience. Celebrating all that is great about being gluten-free, each event will focus on small, artisan and independent businesses making our GF life taste better. Much like the ones covered in your recent show. Kim, it's great that we've inspired you. With another 3 events planned for this year, each one unique, foodie, and of course completely gluten-free. The Gluten-Free Gathering aims to connect and inspire those who eat gluten-free for whatever reason. Tickets are limited. They're £20. They're on sale at my Eventbrite page. Plus, each ticket will include a £1 donation to Celiac UK to support their amazing ongoing work. I don't actually have the link specifically to the Eventbrite page, but I reckon if you go to Eventbrite, all one word, Event, B-R-I-T-E, Eventbrite, you search for gluten-free gathering, yeah, you'll be able to come up with that and you'll be able to buy your tickets. And even if you're not able to go, why don't you just have a look there and see what it's all about? Have a little nose around. Maybe there's something you can set up similar in your country. Yeah, it sounds fantastic. Now, I'm not entirely sure whether I can actually get to that because I have very, very early morning commitments. I do get up in the morning for various reasons at 3:30. So to be at a restaurant carousing from 7 o'clock at night might be a little bit difficult. We'll do our best. We will do our best. That's the GB Pizza Company. And Kim, thank you ever so much for your, as I say, your continued support and all your kind words. GFree Radio. Oh, what's that? I think I can hear a little bird. So it is our tweets of the week. These are the tweets that we've spotted on the service that is Twitter, on social media, and ones that people have forwarded to us or retweeted, or we've seen ourselves. And okay, here we go. Amy Bell, 7-year-old, just asked me what gluten is. I've been dreading this conversation. I like that. Kendra Engstrom says, I will never stop reading ingredients labels on my favourite candies. I can no longer eat on the slight chance it may become gluten-free. And that's it, isn't it? Isn't that really interesting? You kind of do that. You think to yourself, I will just go back. I will just check, just in case they've changed the recipe. It was interesting discussion on Twitter during the course of the week that Tesco's have apparently changed the ingredients in their tomato ketchup, and someone was saying, guys, why didn't you make it more obvious? You just suddenly started putting wheat in, and I've got it, and I bought it, and I always buy it. Obviously not something you're going to buy every single week. You buy it perhaps once a month or once every couple of months, and ate it, and I've become unwell, and then had to go through the whole process of going through what have I eaten over the last 24 hours, and then realise that you've changed the ingredients, and yet if you'd put a new ingredients or new flavour or improved taste as a little flash on the front of the bottle, I would have spotted it when I bought it, and then I wouldn't have become ill. That was a kind of in 140 characters. I don't know how they did it. I'm not sure I did it in 140 seconds. Greg's the Bakers say, we don't have any plans to launch a gluten-free range in the near future. Sorry. What happened to something that we were talking about on the show? Boy, it was one of our really early shows, wasn't it? About a year ago. And I specifically remember being told it may even have been something that I was talking about with some colleagues before the show started. And I'm sure Greg's were involved in that, and certainly some other UK high street big names, fast food companies were involved in. I think one of the motorway service station groups were involved in this as well. And that is having things like sausage rolls and pasties and pies and flaky bakes and that kind of thing, prepared, gluten-free, prepared off the premises, sealed in one of those bags that you can put into an oven. Yeah, paninis, that was another one as well. Already prepared in the bags that you could put into the oven or you could put into the panini toaster and pass over to the customer, and the customer opens it up, all without any risk of cross-contamination because the product is sealed from the time it was produced in the gluten-free factory to the time the customer opened it, wherever they happened to be, in the shop, in the car, at home, in the street, in the office. What happened to all of that? That must have been a good year, 18 months ago. Greg's now saying they don't have any plans to launch a gluten-free range. What a great shame. What a great shame. Gaga for gluten-free. Thanks very much indeed for your support. Pleased to find GFree Radio. So that's great stuff indeed. Sainsbury's Now, obviously, that's a UK supermarket. Always try and open up our discussions to people living in other countries. And we'll mention Sainsbury's. They say, did you know you can use our food rescue tool to search for gluten-free recipes? So include gluten-free as one of your ingredients in the search box. So, and obviously, this is another huge, fantastic resource for people either in the UK or indeed anywhere else in the entire universe to get on to the Sainsbury's website, slightly different website, I'll tell you what it is in a few moments' time, and look up some new and interesting and some different recipes. I say it's a different website. It's sainsburysfoodrescue.co.uk. And this is all about stop wasting food, essentially, and it gives you all sorts of ideas about what you can do to use up a lot of the leftover ingredients. Clever storage tips, what you can do with leftover pasta, what you can do with using up various leftovers and how to use different containers and labelling stuff and all the rest of it. And I'm just looking at it now, and they what is this? Let's see, can we make that a bit bigger? We can't make that bigger, but oh, that is fantastic. There is a picture on the front page of the sainsburysfoodrescue.co.uk. I'm not entirely sure what it is, but it looks like, you know, those joke, the joke jaws, the joke sets of teeth that you can get. They've made some food out of those joke sets of teeth. You know, you used to be able to wind them up, didn't you? And they would chatter along the table. The joke dentures. And they've made some that out of food. Brilliant. Love the look of that. So I'm going to have a little look at that later and see how they did those. That would be great fun for Halloween, wouldn't it? Eh? Or for your kid's birthday party. Fantastic. Sugar-free me says, thanks for the interesting topics. Dejola says, I just ate a bag of extreme chocolate cookies. They lacked gluten, but not calories. And also, let's have another one here. Whenever I eat gluten, my body is like, what do you think you're doing? And then proceeds to try to kill me, says Zionce. Great stuff. Now, talking about Sainsbury's and other supermarkets are available. We went to one of our local supermarkets today, in fact, as we record the show, Tesco's. Now, I've had it in for... No, that is wrong. I haven't had it in for Tesco's. I've criticised Tesco's in the past for some of their labelling. Boy, oh boy, if you haven't been to Tesco's recently, let me tell you that, and I went to a really big one, they've got a lifestyle food fair which is on through until the 31st of August, started 2nd of June. So we don't usually go to the Tesco store, but we found ourselves in one a little bit earlier on, and goes through until the 31st of August. This is a huge event, guys. If you do find yourself near a Tesco's, do go along, because they have got a whole aisle in my local Tesco's, and by that I'm probably talking about 6 or 8 units crammed full of free from food. Some of it is free from sugar, some of it is free from nuts, some of it is organic food, appreciate not necessarily free from per se, but I would say a good 70-80% of it is gluten-free food. I found stuff I had never seen before in all my born days. Some of it is quite expensive, but if you're going to be treating yourself, do a little bit of a taste test. You want to venture out from the same old. Perhaps try some of these items. We didn't bring... I forgot about this. We didn't bring these into the studio, did we? Now, guys, I'm not going to make a point of doing this, and genuinely, we made a mistake last week when we didn't bring those items in for the barcode test. Genuinely, I've forgotten this week as well to bring in my shopping from outside. So, you know, I'm not going to make a point of doing this every single week of saying, ho, 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 let's make the radio show go quiet as we go outside the studio. No. However, it just so happens it's happened 2 days, two shows in a row. But genuinely, I'm going to go and get that box and talk you through what I've got. Stay there. Whistle to yourself or something. And we're back, and here, haven't even had a chance to unpack it yet because we came straight to the studios. There's a whole bag of stuff, most of which I have not seen before. I'll talk you through this briefly because I know we're kind of over time here. I have not had the Udi's Tiger Bloomer. So we got the Tiger Bloomer. Got the Tiger. I'm just trying to see whether we got the receipt in here as well to tell you the cost of these. Yeah, here we go. Here's the receipt. Right. Okay. Oh dear, it's been printed on something which isn't quite clear. The ink's run out. Right. That Tiger Bloomer loaf of bread, £2.50. It's not sliced. It looks a bit different. I thought I'd give that a go for £2.50. That's, you know, that's not a bad price for a loaf of bread. So, we'll pop that down there. Right, also, we've got Amisa, A-M-I-S-A, gluten-free, whole grain, wild berry puff mix with agave nectar. Yeah? Topped with bright wild berry juice. It's a kind of Rice Krispie thing with that inside. Bright and light, these fruity puffs are a wonderful gluten-free start to your day. Packed with a trio of tasty whole grains and the fruity goodness of blueberry and blackcurrant, this is a brilliant breakfast for kids and adults alike. They had about 4 different flavours there of these. I thought I would try those. Now, cereal can be quite expensive. Let's just see how much. This was £3.50. That was actually quite expensive, I thought, but that can be a treat. That can be a treat. We're not going to eat that as a weekday as we rush out of the house. That's going to be a Sunday morning with a coffee and a croissant. That one is. Right, what else have we got here? From the same company, gluten-free fruity oat muesli. I like my mueslis. Obviously, as we know, that it is good for you. £3 for 325 grams. So actually, that is pretty good for gluten-free muesli. If you do a kind of pound for pound comparison where you are, that's not brilliant, but it's not bad. Not bad. Okay, so that's down there. What else have we got? From the same company, pure porridge oats, apple and cinnamon spice. You know, this can keep to the winter. That's not a problem. Put that at the back of the shelf. And that was... It's difficult to see sometimes, isn't it? Exactly what they put these down as. And I can't make out. I think it's £2.80. £2.80 for 300 grams. Not bad. It's just down as grocery on the on the receipt. Right, what else have we got here? Here's a company which I've seen before, not on the shelves, but I've seen on social media and websites. It's a company called Enjoy Life. You may be able to picture their logo. The Enjoy, the E of the Enjoy, is a fork. And this has come from the United States. Partly you can tell that because they've had to put an extra sticker over the nutrition label so it complies with UK labelling. This is Enjoy Life Crunchy Sugar Crisp, handcrafted cookies. 14 cookies for... It's difficult to say. It looks as though it's £3. Again, it's a little bit more expensive than some biscuits, but actually that's not bad, is it? I could eat a packet of biscuits every day. I don't. I really am trying to be so careful with biscuits. And from the same company, also £3, soft baked cookies, gingerbread spice. So I thought they looked a bit interesting. So, you know, seriously, I would have bought those anyway, even if it hadn't been kind of that special promotion, because they look so different. Also from Enjoy Life, that goes down there. We're nearly done. Talking about biscuits, we've got. Yeah, haven't seen these before, and these were £3. God, it soon mounts up, doesn't it? Boy, oh boy. Chia Crunch. Blueberry and almond biscuits with chia seeds. 12 delicious gluten-free treats. They look quite good. I'm really, really intrigued, and that was something else that I would buy anyway, I think, even if it hadn't been that special promotion. You know, I could have left some of the other things, the porridges and the muesli and so on, but this does look intriguing, so I'm going to be trying those a little bit later on. So, and one more... we've got Kind, another big company in the United States. You can tell that because of the label over the nutrition label. The Kind bars. So these are like the bars you can pop. Well, I'll tell you what. Let's open it up and see what they're like. Yeah, so these, oh gosh, they're quite small, but it's something you can have in your pocket. Something you have in your pocket. Boy, oh boy. Yeah. So these were, if we can have a look. Oh, my Lord, really? How much? Oh, I'm not very happy about that. Not happy about that at all. Oh gosh, I do feel guilty even telling you. £5 for 4 bars. Oh, gosh, I'm feeling a bit guilty with that. Oh, I could have done without that. Peanut butter and dark chocolate. Okay, well, I learnt my lesson there. I did learn my lesson there. And I'm looking on the box because I had the impression that there were 5 bars inside. And yes, it says there are 5 bars inside, and genuinely there are 4. So I have been conned there, haven't I? I have been conned there. It specifically says 5 bars of 35 grams. Right, it's one of those situations where you could go back to the company or you could go back to the store, and frankly there's no reason why they should believe you, but there you go. That seriously, hand on heart, ladies and gentlemen, that was genuine. That was genuine. Opening up that live on air, finding 4 bars for £5. £1 a bar. Well, you know, look at the cost of the other bars. They're 60, 70, 80 pence, aren't they? And sometimes, you know, you don't mind paying a little bit more to try something for the first time. If it's just kind of a one-off, it's going to be useful, it's going to be different, it's going to be a bit tasty, do a bit of a taste test, talk about it on the radio. You don't want to be conned as well, do you? Paying well over the odds. I'd like to say lesson learned, but actually you've got no way of knowing, have you, until you open it up. It says 5 bars on the outside, 4 bars on the inside. Okay. Finished on a bit of a downer. Oh, I'm sorry about that. But heck, next week is another week. You enjoy your next 7 days. Do remember, if you would be so kind, to mention us if you're ever at a GFree food fair or expo, like the one we're going to, Europe's biggest, in a couple of weeks' time, for a special edition of the show, then let us know. And also pass on the word. You know, if you're in a shop selling GFree stuff, when you go to your GFree groups and meetings, your celiac disease conferences and so on, do please pass on the word about GFree Radio. We'd love it if you did, and we'll love you forever. We're back in 7 days, and we're talking about a fantastic new service which helps you cook gluten-free. It's not a cookery book, okay? It's a postal service, and they deliver. The postman will come a-knocking on your door once a month to help you cook GFree. I'm not suggesting the mailman comes into your kitchen and starts whizzing something up at the stove. That's not what I'm saying. Find out what I am saying in next week's edition of the GFree Radio Show, the only podcast of its kind in the entire universe.
And That was the GFree Radio Show with Peter Stewart. And you. Thanks for listening. And remember, until next time, be good, be healthy, and be GFree.